What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
So, Nick, Khabib made headlines this week. He came out and made a very brash statement that he does not think that Charles Olivera is going to show up and fight at UFC 280 against Islam Makhachev. And he also said that Beneil Dariush, who's slated for Mateusz Gamrot on the same card, is going to fill the void, and Islam is actually going to win his belt against Dariush and not Olivera. What do you make of it?
Well, I actually enjoy it. One thing Khabib has never gotten credit for is how good he is at selling fights. And now he's not even selling his own fights, but he's selling Islam's fights pretty well. And, you know, when he says stuff like this, it's not trash talk. I think he truly believes that this is an option, that Olivera might not come through and fight this. And Charles Olivera has also told us that he wants this fight to be in Brazil, but that's not happening. So maybe he's going to hold out for something like that. I don't know. Khabib doesn't have any inside information that we're not privy to, but Khabib is doing a good job at helping Islam sell this fight and really get the crowd going about a month or two out.
That's a great point about Khabib selling Islam's fights, because Makhachev is a great fighter. He's the best thing as far as that style of fighting goes since Khabib was competing. He's very dominant. He's the most clear-cut number one contender in all of the sport. He has been for quite some time. I think most people would say he's probably the best fighter at lightweight. I would be one of those people saying that. But at the same time, he doesn't say a whole lot. He doesn't really sell the fights. And Khabib didn't necessarily really sell the fights until he started to get in there with Conor and, you know, tempers sort of flared a little bit. But Khabib has done a much better job as a promoter in retirement than he did when he was competing. And I think this is very exciting. I think that Charles is a little butthurt about the fact that this is not going to be in Brazil, and I think he has some reason to be upset about it. He was the champ. He was defeated by the scale. There were strange circumstances, to say the least, around that whole weigh-in situation. So in my eyes, he is the champ right now, and the champ is having to go into enemy territory, and not just enemy territory. Abu Dhabi, that's not where Khabib and Islam are from, but it might as well be their backyard. That is absolutely their fan base. The crowd is going to be 99% or greater for Islam as far as the cheers and the boos go when these two walk out. So it's a tall order for Charles Olivera, but I think he's up to task. Beneil Dariush is a very good fighter, and if that does happen and there's some shuffling that takes place, nobody could say that Dariush is not deserving of getting in there and contending for a title, but I think the right two people are Charles and Islam, and I think at the end of the day, we're going to have that.
Yeah, I don't see either of these guys backing out of this fight, but Beneil Dariush will be right there, and, you know, just like this UFC 279 that everything got thrown together in the last 24 hours, the UFC is not going to get caught getting burned.
Yeah.
They're going to have multiple fights at 155, and not only that, a number one contenders match potentially with Beneil Dariush and Gamrot on the same card, so they can shuffle somebody in if anything happens, not just Charles decides he's not going to show up. So I think the UFC is more than prepared for whatever may happen. Fingers crossed it stays fully intact, because this is absolutely the card of the year. Charles Olivera is 100% going into Islam's backyard, and he's going to have the world against him when he steps in there. But if there's anybody that's been proving people wrong time and time again ever since he did get a hold of the 155 belt, is Charles Olivera. So while Khabib is doing his part and he's doing a great job at helping Islam, I do think the fight still takes place, and I think it's going to be the toughest fight for Islam Makhachev and the toughest fight for Charles Olivera to date.
I think that's a great point. It is going to be the toughest fight that either of these guys have ever been, and I think Charles actually matches up stylistically pretty good with Islam. I think his grappling from the bottom is superb. It's not just a given that Islam's going to take Charles down, hold him down, and beat him up. If he does do that, I mean, what more can you say about the guy? He's one of the best doing it right now, and I think he'll have a very, very long title reign if he's able to just get in there and maul Olivera. But I don't see it being so easy. I see Olivera really putting up a fight. He's got better striking, in my opinion. He does hit harder. Clearly, the ground and pound is skewed in the favor of Islam, but don't discount that slick jiu-jitsu from the bottom and the submission ability of Charles Olivera. I think tapping Islam Makhachev out is about one of the tallest orders that somebody could try to achieve in the cage, but if anybody could do it, it's Charles Olivera, and I'm super excited for this fight. And just as you said, the UFC knows what they're doing. You see Islam Makhachev versus Charles Olivera at the top of the bill, and you see the co-main event, TJ Dillashaw versus Aljamain Sterling, and guess what the fights are underneath that? Oh, you got Peter Yan, Sugar Sean O'Malley, and you got Mateusz Gamrot versus Beneil Dariush. I wonder why. And you know what? If UFC 279 can shuffle the deck a little bit, UFC 280 might be like, hey, hold my beer.
Yeah, they might not have as many crazy personalities like Nate Diaz and Khamzat Chimaev and Kevin Holland on this card, but there are definitely some wild characters taking the stage at the next UFC pay-per-view. And in my opinion, the first round of this main event fight could wind up being the round of the year. You know, Charles Olivera always comes out guns a-blazing, and he winds up getting hit multiple times and even dropped in the first round of his fights, which always makes for very exciting fights. But what we're going to see is if Islam Makhachev does land a shot on Charles Olivera that drops him, is he going to jump right into the lion's den of the guard that is Charles Oliveira's, or is he going to try to stand up and trade with him? And that will tell us a lot, whether he believes in his submission defense skills, if he thinks his ground and pound's enough to not get submitted by Charles off the back, and if he wants to try to stand and really weather Charles Olivera on the feet before he goes down there to start doing his work on the ground. I just think that every fight Olivera gets in is one that you can't miss, and I think Charles Olivera, Islam Makhachev is absolutely going to be a fight of the year.
Be careful when you knock down Charles Olivera, because that usually means he's got you right where he wants you.
Exactly.
Guys, thanks so much for watching that video. We're your home for all things combat sports, so if that's what you're into, we appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.